Hi, and welcome to the Production Podcast, where we talk about all things production, films, commercials, and more. I'm Joshua Dixon, a director and producer and one of the founders of Umbrella Films. Today, I have with me one of our senior producers from Umbrella Films, Arthur Boon. And we're going to be talking about a commercial that Arthur produced and that I directed for a brand called Carro.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
It was interesting. Cool thing about this is it's a completely different type of commercial than any other typical like live action commercial.
Yeah.
It should have been CG, right? In today's day and age, it should have been CG, but the style and everything, the fact that we did it live action was really cool because it was fake animals.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So before we begin, right, like I think it's worth talking about how the job came about. So we had someone from Singapore contacted you first.
Let's do this. Let's show the spot first.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Let's suck everyone in with the actual commercial.
Out of all the versions, which one's your favorite?
The 30-second.
Yeah.
30-second actually feels the best. So we're just going to play this for everyone. Is that on the TV? Got it? Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Hey, did you know with just a click, you can buy a car online at Carro? At Carro, each car must pass a rigorous 150-point inspection. We deliver to you nationwide. But when your dream car isn't a family car, it's okay. With Carro, you have a 3-day money-back guarantee. Carro, click, buy, drive. Visit carro.sg.
All right, so that was the spot, the 30-second. The reason I like that one better, it just feels better, like the pacing of it. The other one, the 60 seconds, just twice as long, actually feels like it has
drags a little bit more,
exactly.
right?
This breathes nicely as it continues. So.
What I really think is interesting, and it always surprised me, and this might not be part of our topic, but it's always surprising is we start out with like, how are we going to tell this in 60 seconds? Wow, there's so much that we need to talk about. And then after we actually cut the 60 seconds, we always kind of find a way to make it 45 or 30.
Yeah. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. And it's because we don't see that original pacing, so we kind of feel like we need to how do you say it, our mind when we're counting it is longer than it actually needs to be somehow. Not with every commercial, but some commercials I see that happen.
Okay, I don't know, I've never I don't really experience that, I don't think.
Yeah,
like maybe this is just a bad part of my directing, but like I always feel that I feel it varies every time. Yeah, like I feel like it can be longer sometimes in the end, and I feel like sometimes it can be shorter. Actually, maybe what you're saying makes sense now that I've actually analyzed that. So I would definitely say that every time I get into post, right, and when we get into the edit, I'm trying to find ways to cut it down. Yeah, definitely cut it down is the challenge, right? I feel like, actually, no, I take that back, man. It can go either way because there's times where like I'm trying to add more.
Yeah.
Not because the client wants it, but to tell the story better, right? Like we're missing something.
Yeah.
Anytime you take stuff out in a commercial though, you're so limited, right? Like that's the worst thing you can actually do is take stuff out of a commercial.
Well, like
figure out how to put it in.
Yeah.
You can still get around it as long as the story's there.
Yeah.
But taking it out, it always impacts the story.
Yeah. Well, what I think is kind of interesting is like there's this exercise, right, that directors need to do where, first of all, you're counting on set. Like if anybody's ever worked with a director and they're sitting there and they're just like, they're actually counting the seconds for that shot.
Yeah.
So they know, right. And I think you do that too. I do that a lot. Yeah. So, but then
I actually don't really do it ever.
Really?
It just sometimes like so what I do is I do that during the storyboarding process.
Okay.
Storyboarding, so what I do is I take my phone, put the timer on, storyboard in front of me. I hit play, or I'm sorry, I hit run on the timer, right?
Yeah.
And then I start reading it, imagining sound design, pacing of the actual commercial, go through all the frames. And then as I get to the end, I push stop on the timer, right?
Yeah.
And then that's kind of where I figure out how it's playing, time wise.
Yeah.
But you definitely do it more than I do. The frame, the times.
I calculate it. I basically think that a person needs 2 to 3 seconds to see and register a shot, right? So I just basically I have 60 seconds. I have these many shots. How many seconds is per shot?
Sure.
Yeah. And then if I know like there's like a montage sequence or something can be really quick, like they don't even need to register. It's more for the impact of emotional impact. Then I can say, okay, these shots can only be a second or half a second or something.
Yeah, I think that like I probably am doing myself a favor ahead of time and not doing that because I know the client's gonna move it around anyways, like, so it's I always find myself like in the middle of I find myself like trying to be like, okay, this is going to be the one part of the commercial that I want to fight for.
Yeah.
Right. And I try to pick that out in the beginning because it's like, they're hiring you as a director. So you have your creative vision. But then a lot of times, like, I don't feel that clients understand that they are hiring you for your creative vision. Right. They're hiring you most of the time because you're a safe bet.
Yeah.
Right. You've directed things like this before, delivered things like this before. It happened on time, on budget, et cetera. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like usually what I feel the most of the time people are hired as directors for. Then it's like this upper echelon of directors, right, who get picked because they're in demand and their stuff is amazing. Yeah. And that's really, unfortunately, I don't feel like I'm at that in the commercial level.
One day.
Yeah. Well, let's see. No, I'm
next thing you know,
I have an internal battle right now on whether or not I want to keep directing commercials.
Well, I think next thing you know, you're going to see Joshua Dixon directing a commercial from space. And it's going to be like trippy. You're shooting things.
That's not happening now, man. Space station is...
The spaceship is not happening?
Yeah, well, the space station is what it's... there's issues with it now, right?
Yeah. Which one are you talking about?
The International Space Station.
Oh. No, I thought you were just going to do like the Tom Cruise thing where his next movie is going to be...
That was in the space station.
He was going to use the International Space Station.
From what I understood, they were going to the ISS. And now because the whole conflict, right, with Ukraine and Russia, they're not getting access to it or something like that. So I think that has been tabled. Yeah.
Well...
Poor Tom Cruise, who literally hangs out of airplanes, flies helicopters, all that stuff, right? Like he is not going to be able to do his grand finale,
It's shooting a movie in space.
Yeah, actually in space, yeah.
That would be...
It's pretty insane.
Yeah, that would be a first, right? I don't think there's ever been a movie shot in space, aside from like documentaries and stuff like that.
No, I don't think there's ever been an AD in space yelling action.
No, there's never been an AD in space.
But can you imagine getting that call and being like, so this, like say you're at the level of an AD where you actually get to AD a movie that Tom Cruise is producing and acting in, right? Because he produces all his stuff now, right?
Yeah.
AD acts in. So it's just say you got that call and then they're like, and by the way, it's not on Earth. Yeah.
It's in space.
Yeah. Like that's a whole other, like you, so normally like if you got the job, right, you'd be like, yeah, no problem. I'll make the time to AD a Tom Cruise movie. Yeah. But now you got to understand, or now you got to make the decision if you want to actually go to space or not. Cause that's kind of a bit freaky to me, man.
You know what it's like? It's like Armageddon where they're training like oil rig guys.
This is what I'm talking about. Yeah. So like maybe only the film students are showing up now.
Yeah. So they're just training for it. No, but actually there was, I know we're going way off.
Yeah, we'll come back in a second.
Yeah, but there was actually Planet Earth. So I believe Planet Earth 1 or 2, they had scenes shot from space. And I read an article about how they did it. And apparently they didn't take a DOP or anything up. They taught the astronauts how to use a camera. And they taught them basic cinematography and stuff like that. And they actually shot really good stuff.
Yep.
Like, who would have thought an astronaut would be able to learn something really quickly?
Yeah, I believe they use Red cameras for that. I believe there was a cooperation with Red Digital Cinema for that.
I'm not sure if it was Red or Canon. I remember reading the article about it, but yeah, it's
and they used some lens that Kubrick had designed, I believe. Because it had an aperture of like f.7 or 8 or something like that, like lower than 1.
Yeah.
Right. Like lower than t.9 or whatever. Like so, it was. Yeah, like so it could photo, or is this the same thing where they photographed the backside of the moon or something like that when it was dark?
No, this is
okay.
This
Maybe I'm getting that mixed up.
Yeah, so this was basically they wanted to get shots of like Earth from I think one of the International Space Stations.
Okay.
So they basically, I think it was a Canon like C300 or something like that, but they put like really nice lens on it.
Yeah, and I'm sure if it's lined up with where it's getting sunlight, then it will.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
The thing that was just interesting for me was like that I actually watched a documentary and I was like, wow, these shots are amazing. And then I found out later it was astronauts that shot.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, man.
They had like proper lighting. They learned it. Who would have thought that like astronauts...
Proper lighting?
Like, well...
You mean the sunlight?
No, but it wasn't blown out. It wasn't, it was just really well balanced.
They took a course.
They took a course,
a video course.
And then they got the astronauts to be a DOP. So if you do want to be a DOP...
Well, okay, granted, if no, granted, you got to there's one caveat to that, right?
Yeah.
If you're an astronaut, you're not some dumb guy, right? Like you're the best of the best. You know what I mean? Like they'll definitely be able to teach you, and you'll definitely be able to figure it out.
Yeah, and they're probably
and plus you got a lot of time and space, I feel like. you know what I mean?
Just time to practice.
Yeah, exactly. Like
yeah. And I mean, I guess they're some of the only people on Earth that can actually say things like, "Oh, this isn't rocket science," because it literally isn't for them.
Kind of. It's in that realm, right?
It's like there's nothing harder than rocket science, so apparently they can learn anything. Okay, let's get back to the spot. So so some of the topics on this, right? So we showed the spot just now, producing Carro, how we got the call. We were contacted literally because I mean, I don't think that there was a particular way. We bid on it again with I think 2 or 3 other production houses. I think we probably won it because we were one of the few production houses during COVID that was still functioning at full capacity, right? Like that really was one of the advantages. We were functioning, all the producers, everyone, we still had working for us. And so we're still pumping out line budgets and quotations and stuff, throughout the pandemic. Yeah. And so because if you remember, like, I don't know, from the time we got the call to the time we actually shot was 6 months or something? 6 months. So
it just kept going on and on and on, to be frank,
Well, I think...
Because shutdowns and then...
We had a lockdown once when the job was still in, like, negotiation stage. Again, in August.
Yeah.
And then that one dragged on to November. So...
Wow, you remember the timeline really well.
Yeah, no, sorry. Dragged out into mid-October. So we shot late October as soon as like lockdown was up.
It's a year now. This is a year ago now.
Yeah, this is a year ago now. And then I remember November 8th, because our client was like, I need this video out by November 8th. And I was just sitting there like planning out posts and kind of...
Was that our delivery? Our delivery was November 8th?
Yeah, our delivery date was supposed to be November 8th. So we actually had pretty much everything done. And ready to deliver on November 8th. I think the only things that
but we had prep. The prep was more than a month or something, right? Because the animal heads.
So yeah, so that's part of what we're talking about today, right? Is that whole process. But yeah, the animal heads alone took like, I would say at the very least 2 months.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we did confirm the job 2 months before we shot.
We confirmed the job so we had the job since June.
Yeah.
And then the process for the animal
contracts were signed in like August or something, right?
No, so it was signed in June. July, actually, we began the animal heads.
Wow, man.
And the animal heads...
This is why you were the producer on it. You were producing.
Yeah.
And I don't remember all this.
The animal heads were done by... I think we done all the sculpting and everything by... late August, early September, and then we held off on doing the fur because we didn't want the fur to kind of get, dirty and stuff while we're just waiting around and stuff like that. So there's a whole process in it. And then to the point where you were talking about was I think why we won the job wasn't just because, you know, we're the ones active, but I think it was also because we figured out how to do it practically in budget.
Well, yeah, that was definitely a big part of it. That was a huge part about it. If you remember, there was another scene. So actually, when they came to us, right, they had 4 animals.
So it started with
there was an octopus,
2 octopuses in like a command center.
Yep.
And then it was an eagle that was looking at the car, and then the cheetah delivered.
Yeah, and then the octopus changed to a rabbit.
Yeah.
We even made the rabbit head.
Yeah.
I'll show that later. And then they cut the scene.
Yeah.
Right? Which was smart. I don't think it made any sense. And so we ended up, because cheetah and rabbit are confusing messaging, right? They're both fast animals.
Yeah.
Right? So we kept the cheetah. We kept the eagle. And so, yeah, so that was, so when we won the job, we were pitching on what we were pitching on. It may have been even an extra day of production in the beginning, I think. And we cut that day of production down.
So we wanted to do, because the idea was, do we do an octopus or not? And we talked about logistic of it.
CG was a really big thing.
Yeah,
that we needed to do
for the octopus was
because
really
it can't click on buttons on the command center
Yeah.
and stuff, you know, without CG.
And there was also the issue of the command center itself, like art directing it and getting it all up and running. We were talking about using the XStar stage for the main screen and then everything else built behind it. But yeah, that became like an extra day that the client was like, you know what?
Budget,
We can't do that. But I think personally, it streamlined the commercial. Because as you saw, like the 30-second feels good.
Yep.
Right. But if we had that extra scene,
sure, it could have filled in that. Yeah, but the messaging just didn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Like they were trying to. I mean, I think they're trying to get another. They're trying to get more production value into it of some sort. I don't think it made sense. Like it made sense to cut it because in the end, it was cheetah, which is fast, and eagle, which can inspect the car. It's kind of eagle eye, right? And then the rabbit, it was for...
So the rabbit was supposed to...
What was rabbit?
So the rabbit and the octopus, it was supposed to be that when someone clicks to buy a car, the rabbit kind of sees the message, goes to find the car in their system, inspects it, finds the information.
Yeah. I remember the boards we drew for it now.
Yeah, but like... It kind of made the process more complicated as well, messaging wise.
It's like so that was one issue, right? So the rabbit, because I remember we redrew the frames for the rabbit so many times, man. Actually, a lot of times now. I remember that. So when we kept, every time we'd go back literally to the drawing board, right?
Yeah,
to redraw the rabbit. It didn't make sense because we had it in like it was now in the command center, right? The rabbit was in the command center. First, it was an octopus, which made sense, right? Because you got like an octopus, 8 arms, processing multiple orders at the same time, right? Like, okay, push the button for this order, for that order, right? All over the place, right? And then they started changing the graphics, right? And it became, the graphics, need to line up actually with what's happening in the process. And like, we started to lose sight of like what the actual main message and feeling of that scene would have been, right?
Yeah.
And then it changed to a rabbit because the rabbit could like shoot around and like this message and this message, back and forth, whatever it is, right? And it just I don't think anyone would ever get what the rabbit was doing.
Yeah.
Right. The octopus, yes, because it can multitask.
Yeah.
Right. The rabbit is literally like back and forth, right? And it wouldn't connect with the viewer.
No, there's also, I just remembered there's no reason. And this is actually one thing I wanted to say before the video played is just so our viewers know, like the commercial is supposed to be aired in originally 4 countries. It was supposed to be aired in Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia.
Yep.
And there was an issue with the rabbit for Indonesia, if you remember.
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
You don't? So we had an issue where we're talking about the animals. And I think this is part of the reasoning the clients kind of, gutted the rabbit as well. And this is something very interesting for commercial when you're doing it for multiple countries is you have to understand the culture they flagged the Indonesian team flagged the rabbit as having a negative annotation.
Oh, really?
Because in Indonesia, apparently, like rabbits are used to describe, people that have
What is this? Why are we
a lot of intercourse.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I remember this issue, and they were like,
so a rabbit is a symbol of sex,
of like, yeah, doing it a lot apparently. Okay. And so especially because it was a female rabbit that we were, kind of putting. All right, this is just. So anyway, so there's like that negative annotation, and I remember that's part of the reason, part of the conversation we had. And actually, this commercial had a few of these kind of issues, if you remember, during our shoot as well, with wardrobe and stuff like that, where we had to stop shooting for 30 minutes.
That's always the challenge, though, with a multicultural spot, right? Like, for all the, so if you produce, the spots go into a Muslim country, you can only use one hand, right? Like, so we shot a commercial a while back. I won't say the name of it. But it had this dance routine in it. I don't know. You'd probably remember it. Fern was producing it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to say that, but, so there was a family eating at the table, right? And it was going to Indonesia, which is predominantly Muslim. Yeah. And they were eating using the wrong hands. You can't, in a commercial show, eating with the wrong hand. It's viewed as not sanitary, because when you go to the restroom, I don't know. It's this whole thing that I don't want to get into. Yeah. So like all these little things like that, they become issues, every country. And that's the challenge, right? That's what a good producer and director can do, is get around these things. Yeah. The clients, will always let you know about these at the shoot, usually. So, getting around those, figuring out. I think in that commercial, I had to flip the image in order to get around that, because I could not. We'd already shot it, and then they told us 2 hours after we shot it. Yeah. So I flipped it in post. Okay. To make it the opposite hand, something like that. So. Yeah.
No, but yeah, that's an interesting challenge about doing commercials for multi countries, right? You have to figure these things out. I remember with Carro, so
even different cuts, right? Every country you can even get a different cut in the end.
Okay. So I guess let's touch on that a little bit. So with Carro was basically the wardrobe, right? Basically, they were just like, can we see above the belly button or not? Or does it have to go down underneath? Stuff like that. There was like little things like how much of the opening around the t-shirt, the woman's t-shirt, can be shown, right? How deep can the collar be and stuff like that? And that was part of the process.
A quick reminder for all of the people that are listening. It's greatly appreciated if you could leave us a review about the podcast and let us know your thoughts.
So I think we talked about it this much. Our viewers probably don't even know what the product is.
Yeah, no. Let's jump over to, actually, let's just talk real quick about what that is. So the actual product is it's an app or a website, right? And they take in, or I guess they purchase, I don't know. Anyways, they have used cars for sale, right? And you can go online or on an iPhone app and literally do everything online. The processing for the paperwork, the ownership, the loan, all of that, right? It all takes place, your insurance and everything, on the app, and then they deliver the car to you. Yeah. You don't have to go to their showroom or their facility to see the car. And it goes through a certain amount of point inspections, shows you the inside out, even has like audio recordings of the car running. Yeah. Like, so you can hear the motor and what the exhaust sounds like and
360
stuff.
Camera.
Yeah. That was a big part, right?
Car. Yeah.
They shoot all the way around, inside, outside, the whole thing. So, and it has a return policy. I think like 7 day or something. So depending on the country.
Depending on the country. So it's 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, depending on what country you're in. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the thing. So it's basically kind of like trying to figure out how to make buying a car simple for someone, so you can be at home watching television with your family, like they do in the commercial. Yeah. And order
I'm gonna just buy a car.
Yeah. Randomly. So.
Yeah. This episode of Game of Thrones is too dark. I'm gonna buy a car instead. That's
there you go. So so that's kind of what the whole thing is. So now, so we talked about all these animals that represent the different process, buying it. Let's get into what I think everyone's really interested in is the process of making the animal heads.
Yeah, this process was really, for me, it was brand new. I've never done animal heads. It was very interesting to produce. On your side, it probably a whole different story.
Yeah, I mean, it was my first time to work with animal heads as well. Eric, can we turn on the aircon? Let's just deal with it anyways. We can leave this in the podcast.
Yeah.
It's just getting too hot in here. So the animal heads, like let me preface everything about the animal heads. Going in, right? They asked about doing things CG.
Yeah.
The budget was not there, man. The budget was like a quarter of what it should have been to do CG for all this.
Yeah.
It was not going to happen. And so we I don't know if they provided us an option, but we all landed in the end on doing practical heads, right? Not animatronics, but just basically they're masks. They're big masks, right, that fit on top of your head, shoulders, clavicle, that whole thing area, and then pieces of the mask can, like, so for example, the rabbit ears, right, that we didn't use can bend. The mouth's open and you can set the positions. The eyes can turn and you can reset the position. So like if you want to provide any kind of like feeling that like there's more of a reaction or a character, actually inside that animal, like it's real life, you have to cut and then cut back to another shot or an angle, and the ear or the eye position or the mouth position has moved, right?
Yeah.
So that was the one requirement that we had to have for these animal heads going in, right? Yeah. That was that was the, I think, minimum that we had to have. Otherwise, if we didn't have that, it's just like a statue.
Yeah.
Right. So there was that. So now after with that, let's talk about the actual process. I have some photos and stuff queued up here as well. So if you would like to, you will remember the process much more than I will.
So I think this first one here is your references, right? So just so you know, when I get this is more for the viewer, but when we started the process, and this is just me doing my due diligence as a producer, right? We looked at a few people that could try to do it, and then their processes, their cost, and stuff like that. And we landed at this guy named Ding. Apparently, he's like the animal head.
Yeah, he's the guy who makes animal heads here
for all the commercials and stuff. And so he's great. But the one challenge was, he's an artist kind of guy, right? He won't pick up his phone if he's working. He's hard to contact and stuff. And then two, he had very specific kind of like, this is my process. This is how I work through it. Yeah. And so his process basically broke down into getting a brief. Usually he'll try to get a drawing of the animal heads. And then he'll go to a process of sculpting them and then furring them. And then it's just minor touch-ups and stuff before we shoot. So I think here your first thing here is your references that you provided for him, because we didn't do the whole sketching process. We didn't have enough time initially, because we wanted initially to shoot in August. But then that got pushed back later after we've already sculpted the head. So
right. So I provided a bunch of reference, right? So I went through. This is the rabbit. We didn't use a rabbit, but dude, I figured out all these different species of rabbits, right?
Yeah.
I got different, like, and it's crazy. Everyone, if you think about it, you're like, oh, I know what a rabbit looks like. There's so many different types of rabbits. Like it's really crazy. Like, and cheetahs too, right? Cheetahs and rabbits. Those are the two where I had tons of different options. Cheetah spots, they're actually different species. Like it's like depending on where they're in the world. So like the cheetahs and there's an Asiatic cheetah that's much woolier and looks much bigger, kind of like a woolly husky versus a standard hair husky, right? So it's kind of like that thing. And so like I was picking pieces of all these different species of the rabbits and the cheetahs and everything to figure out how it incorporates with a human.
Yeah.
Right. Which is the bigger challenge. So like this was the biggest challenge, was like, client says, well, it doesn't look like a rabbit. It's not a rabbit. It's a rabbit person.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to imagine what a rabbit person looks like. Like, yeah, well, it doesn't look like a rabbit enough. Okay. What features don't feel like a rabbit? Right. Well, the ears feel weird. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the ears of rabbits. Here's just the ears of a rabbit. And you show them only that, right? Don't show them the head or anything.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it does look like it. So it's like this whole like back and forth trying to convince your client, what actually works. And it's kind of like, you're an artist as well at the same time, right? Figuring out what bits and pieces. And I tried to rely on Jang, right? The creature artist, right?
Yeah.
On this a lot, but I don't know. I feel like it was a collaboration between he and I in the end. And I kind of like picked and chose what I liked. But it was everything down to like the whiskers, the nose, the size of the nose. Like if you go down here and you look down here, like these things, this is actually a hare. It's not a rabbit. And it's from another commercial for IKEA or something. I don't remember what it was.
British IKEA commercial, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's actually got a completely different size head and shape than this one.
Yeah.
Which this is a different type of rabbit. And I chose this one because it feels feminine, right?
Yeah.
More so this feels like a male rabbit. So that was, so different species felt different in those different ways. So
yeah. So there's that, and you have your eagle, and then there's one thing that's
this has to fit the personality, right, of the creature in the spot too.
Yeah. So this initial brief, I remember when we presented this to our creature, our creaturist, he was like, "Well, cool, but I get all these." And there's always this constant debate of how do we make it work for an actual person? For instance, like the eagle head, like we're talking about, can we have the eyes going through the mouth of the person, right? And then there's these challenges of, can they see? Can they not see? Yeah, it needs to fit like a cap. Well, why can't the beak go on as a cap? Well, if the beak is a cap, then the beak is too wide,
right.
Like there's these kind of almost like you can't just imagine making a head. You have to imagine a person inside the head, how he would fit in, how the rigging inside would work and stuff like that. It was a whole
there's
a
actually
lot of back and forth.
There's and it was a big learning process for us as well. But I would say going into this that we knew that we need to prepare, or how do you say, not prepare, we need to be ready for changes like all the time, prepared to learn something new, right? Not just going in thinking we know how to make it work. We had to rely on the expertise of the creature artist,
Yeah.
And then we had to figure out how to explain something we just learned to the client who's just learning it also, but still control it, right? One other big challenge I just want to note is the client kept noting about how the head is too big looking.
Yeah.
Right. And we're still trying to, like, this is the thing is I understand the physical limitation, so I have to work around it somehow because the person's head is what feels natural in size to their body.
Yeah.
But you're having to put a mask on top of it that has a beak, has feathers, has fur, has ears, right?
I wouldn't even call it a mask. It's a helmet, man.
Yeah, well, it's a costume. It's a full,
like it's imagine.
well, if you go to the Masked Singer now, man, it's full straight.
on.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, but what I mean is if you think about the proportions, right?
Yeah.
Like look at this head on the bottom. Like that's not a mask. That's like that's like a biker's helmet with fur and a beak on it.
I don't know. I mean, it covers your complete head all the way. The thing is, right, it covers you all the way down through your shirt, right?
Yeah.
So that was the thing is, right, like when you put that on, it's not going to feel as small as your head because it's on top of your head, right? It's another layer. And so that was the big issue,
Yeah.
and getting them to understand or figure. So this is the things. Whenever I had this challenge with the client, the way that I would, from what I remember, the way I was trying to get around it was explaining the personality and what it's going to look like when we shoot with it.
Yeah.
Right. Because things through the camera, things look way different than they do, you know, especially like, the creature artist, he's creating these, right? And he has the talents or whatever showing up to do fitting to make sure it's, you know, fitting them, and they put it on and then he takes a picture with his iPhone, right, and sends it to us. That looks way different than it's going to be, you know, in camera. And with COVID and everything, we weren't able to be there to try to shoot an angle that helps sell it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember that was one of the challenges. I think if we go out of here and into like the sculpting process, we can kind of show the viewers kind of. So this is the cheetah you were talking about. Different.
Yeah. See, so this is an Asiatic cheetah.
Yeah. Has a chubbier, like
exactly.
full of fur.
And this is, I forget what it is, but you find it this is an African species of some sort. Anyway, so I even picked out like the hair needs to stand up to add more of a personality to make him feel like more wild, like, you know, born to be wild type of thing. I put sunglasses on him. He has the windows down while he's, you know, driving the car. So like this hair on top made sense. Right.
Yeah.
And so I had stuff, I showed them stuff that, so for example, like all this was to show them what I liked and I don't like, right? This feels cartoony and cosplay. I didn't like that. Same thing for the cheetah. So that was for the rabbit and the cheetah as well. I don't want it to feel, you know, like a cartoon. The tails, I had specific things about the tail. So that was kind of like, you know,